here. I'd just like to go through a couple of housekeeping issues with you. Firstly, we have the chat section. Please use that. Feel free to say hello to us from wherever you are. But also, if you have questions for Karl, do please use the Q&A area that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. Click on that and post your questions there. The reason being that obviously in the chat, questions can get a little lost. So please do use the Q&A. We're also broadcasting this on our Facebook link, and it will be available to watch later on our YouTube channel. So thank you for that. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Karl Markwald from ESP. He's the founder and a director of that fantastic company. And Karl has some great insights that we'll be discussing on the way forward and what we all should be thinking about. So over to you, Karl.
Hi, everybody, and just checking that you can hear me, Phil.
I can indeed. Yep.
Perfect. I'm situated in the Karoo, everybody, and so I just needed to check my technologies up to scratch to be in here. Yeah, so here we are, and everybody's a little bit tired of hearing about COVID and the reality we're facing and this new business abnormal. So today what I'd like to explore, and thank you, Phil, for the invitation and for being here, is just a little bit of the thinking that we're applying to the situation, and again, also looking for input from you as guests, what questions you have, and to take our flow from there. So Phil, what I'd like to do is just to screen share at this point, and if I may grab the screen here, and there we go. There it should be. You should be seeing a map of what we're looking at in the world. Just confirming you can see that, Phil?
Yep, certainly can.
Okay, great. So, you know, we can see over here that Europe is obviously starting to come out of the situation. We know the States is not looking good. But what I'd like to do, if you can see my cursor, is the difference between what's happening in the northern and southern hemispheres, what's catching my attention. And specifically, we know that something big is starting to happen in Russia and something big is happening in Brazil, just as something's happening here in South Africa. India seems to be holding it in a reasonable way. But Russia, Brazil, South Africa, and India make up a particular economic forum. And what I've been doing is watching these four countries, it's the BRICS group, and to see what's happening there. And because essentially when we started looking first at what was happening in Europe, the curve, and let me just show you what I mean. I'm going to switch over here to a COVID tracking graph. In fact, let me come back to South Africa here. So we know kind of what's happening in South Africa, and there's a steady curve, and we went into lockdown somewhere here, which brought the numbers down, and then it's starting to increase. The green is the recovery, so the blue is what I'm looking at here. So that's what's happening in South Africa. And if we come back to the international stage, you'll see something pretty alarming now. Top countries with new cases, and Mexico is really moved up to the top there. Look at where USA is, and look at where Pakistan is. And Brazil is also moving up there very quickly. So basically moving back to here, we have a situation from my business analytics point of view, from looking at business information, and so I'm applying that same strategy to here. Europe is moving out of the curve, we know that, but what's happening in countries like Brazil, Uruguay or Paraguay's medical system has actually broken down already. And the problem is, and I think this is something that I say we need to understand, and the impact on our business. And I'll move on to the positive side. I want to paint a picture of what we're facing, the reality, trying to cut through the guff of all the news. And then I can take you to where I think we need to go as an industry, because I believe there's hope. This is a black swan event, and a black swan event is essentially where you get to change the game. And obviously this is happening to us. So if we look at the curve and what's happening in countries like Brazil, they are, and let me just switch back here to even Mexico, it's showing the same curve there. They're moving into a situation which has happened already in Peru, where the number of COVID cases that are coming in means that they can't actually take care of normal healthcare. So somebody who has, let's say, a heart aneurysm and needs to be attended to, because of the sheer volume, excuse me, they can't attend to those situations. And that's when you have a meltdown in your medical system. And that's what the South African government is wanting to avoid. And there's a lot of conspiracy theory about what's happening. And what I want to say to you is, looking at the stats, the South African government is doing an outstanding job, in my opinion, looking at the data. They've got a body of about 20 scientists and professional people advising the government, and looking at what they're doing, it's making absolute sense. So how does this apply to us? So one of the things that we're looking at is that in South Africa, and I haven't got that graph on the screen here, I'll find it a little bit later, but the tourism industry is saying, as they're in level 1 like us, they're predicting that if we open, they're predicting we'll only open to level 1 at this rate, probably in December. Now that's kind of shocking for us, and that's why the various industry bodies are lobbying to get that shifted around. Luckily, we've been able to open up retailing, which is a small gesture, and it's obviously huge for us. But the bigger picture is, if we looking at South Africa's graph, they're saying that this graph here is going to peak around August, September. It was originally saying September, but because of what they did here, because of the firm lockdown coming so quickly, it's been moved back to August. So already the government has bought us potentially a month, but all of that is speculation at this point. So, today we're talking about doing business abnormal, and, it's not like about retailing right now. It's not about clean touch. These things we all know. If you haven't already started implementing those procedures, if you haven't already started speaking to your staff and training them on protocols, you're behind the curve. But luckily, you've still got a little bit of time. Well, unfortunately, you have a bit of time to prepare. So where are we going to? And, I've skimmed through that fairly quickly because this has been ad nauseum. So one of the things that we've been working on is in the collective corporation. Some of you will be knowing about that. And we've got a forum going there specifically to help you as owners in terms of what is needed, and things like, clean touch and the various people that are coming together under this collective corporation to help you to prepare for what needs to be done. Like, for example, if you need the screens, who to buy those from, those sorts of things. But I'm going to go down here into where we're looking at the coaching side. And what is ESP as a company who is in IT got to do with coaching? And what I want to just step back. Some of you have been taking part in the collective corporation. Please excuse if I'm repeating myself. But essentially, the collective corporation is something that we formulated in the early 90s after apartheid, and when there was rampant inflation and the country was struggling. And that's when I got involved in the industry, and the owners were basically pretty much going out of business, living out of the till essentially to stay alive. And we're kind of in a similar situation now. If you think about it, you're living out on reserves. And the collective corporation, the idea behind it is, how can we come together as an industry and work together to make a difference? Because this is something that we all face. And if we do the normal factionalism of, well, these are my clients, and overprotective, it creates division. And as we, we need to stand together in this. We're stronger together. So if we can formulate policies and frameworks and ways of working at this point together, and basically press upon government that we're a professional industry, and that our staff raise their professionalism to a new level, then we're in a stage where we're able to introduce new ideas to our clients. I'm going to pause there. I've been speaking very quickly. Introducing new ideas to our clients. And on that note, there's something that we were launching yesterday called connection therapy. And there's a little bit about that I'll come back to. So I'm going to jump out of there a little bit. And I've got a particular vision for the industry. My background is in computer science, organizational psychology, and business information systems. That's where the analytics side comes in. And I've always wondered, why have I ended up in this particular industry, this wellness industry? And it's been clear to me over the years that the what I have to offer as an individual is to help to create frameworks bridging the gap between, let's say, technology, business, and people. And we know that in our industry, essentially our therapists and stylists, and sorry, I'm calling it stylists because I'm so used to talking to the hairdressing trade, but our therapists are essentially providing a counseling, psychological, value-added benefit with every session that they're giving to your and their clients. And so what I've been looking at over the years is how to integrate that. And this COVID situation is creating a black swan event that when you do start seeing your clients again, and your therapists are working with their clients, what we're seeing in the international situation is that there's a rush for business, and then it tails down very quickly. So what are we going to do in order to create new business? And these are where the ideas come in. And something that we were talking about is this red and blue coaching, is that we were needing essentially blue consciousness. We need to find a way forward. And that's kind of like, a little bit of the matrix, the red and the blue pill, a play on that. And the red consciousness, which is to get things done. And that's where we're sitting at this stage. And there's a little proverb that's on the screen there, but essentially what I'm looking for here is something called blue ocean strategies. Now, blue ocean strategies are really important because where we're sitting is if we in shark red infested water, we are all competing for the same thing. Phil was asking me just before we came online, how's ESP doing? Are we taking a knock? And sure, at a level we're taking a knock, but I've got to say we're busier than ever, and we're busy with training, getting people up to speed on systems, where clients haven't had the time to engage with us because they're so busy Monday to Friday or Saturday or even 7 days a week. There's an opportunity for us to engage and to train owners, the staff. And so we're very, very busy. And what we found is that our clients are happy to continue paying their support fees or their subscriptions. And so we're really in a fortunate position where we are able to add value. And what I'm saying is, what I would like to propose is to find new ways to add value back into the wellness industry. I'll just take a little pause at this point just to check in with Phil if there's anything that's coming up that I need to take note of, because I can't see the questions.
There's one just about how to join the collective webinars, which we can deal with at the end, perhaps. Yeah.
Yes, well, I'll help you with that. Thanks a lot. Yeah. I'm going to cough, so just let me mute for a second.
Please do. No.
Okay.
It's not the virus.
No, it's not. But with all the talking, all right. So slowing down a little bit. So a blue ocean strategy is essentially if you think of Newton and how he discovered gravity, he was sitting under the tree. It was a famous story, and the apple fell down, and so he got this idea of gravity. And essentially, that's what we need to do. We need to do things that come out of the blue. And that's what a blue ocean strategy is. So, for example, I believe that there is a possibility that South Africa could, through the situation, come up with something that's uniquely African that could, for example, be available to the rest of the world. So let me take you forward into this idea. It's something that I'm working on, and I want to just propose it to you. But really what I'm wanting to achieve in this talk is not just this particular idea that I'm presenting, but for other ideas to come up. And that's the point of the collective corporation, is to take the ideas there and let the best ideas float to the top. And I mean, we've probably got about 150 odd people in the collective corporation. We've got a WhatsApp group, but to put it in perspective, in this industry, and if we also bring across the hairdressing industry and then the aesthetics and all the different aspects, there are probably over 30 to 40,000 practitioners, if not more. So if we only, for example, in the collective corporation, only dealing with a couple of hundred, really, that is a fraction, and it's a tip of the iceberg. All right. So what is the idea? So let me just take you through it a little bit. And yesterday I was presenting on this, but I had technical difficulties and I was out of the whole equation. So people had to stand in. But essentially what we're saying is we need to establish a clean communication framework with our staff. With our staff and with our clients. And this is very important. And what I'm doing here is I'm borrowing on NBC. It's nonviolent communication. Some of you may be aware of this. It's not a South African invention. In fact, it came out of Israel and was made popular in the States, but it's very applicable to South Africa. And how NBC works, because it creates a clean communication framework, is it does two things. It establishes what are your needs, which is the one part that I'm calling the blue consciousness. This is the ideas out of the blue. And then the second thing is it says, well, what is your strategy as to how you're going to achieve satisfying your need? And this is where we're sitting at this stage right now. Those of you that are in this webinar, you are involved in this industry. You know, we're not necessarily in a corporate structure, so you have to reinvent yourself constantly to be relevant. And so how does it work? It basically says, well, yeah, our needs, and it falls on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is we need essentially two things. We need, at the core level, safety and love. You know, safety will be things like water, food, shelter, community. And love is to be heard, to be valued, and to have meaning, life, and purpose. And now in our industry, in the wellness industry, we're working on two of these every day with every client. We are listening to the clients to hear what they want in their particular session. And then on top of that, you know, we are valuing them and improving their own perception of their own value. Because as was said yesterday, is you want to have a client coming in and have them walking out as a hero. So the consciousness out there is everybody's being affected, but if they can come out as a hero, you've value added. And so this is very much where we're going. And what we've done is we brought in a doctor to hold a whole section around connection therapy. And what my thrust at this point into the industry as the collective corporation is to present and say, why can't we take that thing that we've always said unofficially, that our staff do act as therapists to our clients. And I'm not just talking about as styling therapists, I'm talking about as sounding boards. You know, if you think of the Catholic Church, you go for, and I've just forgotten now, but you go to get absolution, to have your sins heard, and then the priest absolves you, to confession. Sorry, that's it. So you go for confession. And that was the early form of psychology. And, you know, I feel that our industry has replaced confession. You know, the church used to do it in that form, but I feel that our therapists do it. And what I'm wanting to do, and I've had this idea for about a number of years, and I started working on this about 4 years ago with our team. And that's where ESP Connect came about, because we want to do connection. And so we obviously know in this COVID situation and post-COVID that people are going to be hungry for connection, and touch is obviously the best form of connection. So the idea that I'm presenting is, if we can take our therapists up to a new level where they are accredited and they have skills and training to listen to people's needs. And listening to people's needs, or listening is a very big skill. You know, listening doesn't mean, for example, providing a solution. And so it's these sorts of things that the training would focus on. And what I'm hoping is, by the time we reach breakout, that we have people that are actually staff that are actually accredited by this doctor and are actually able to charge more as a value add. That side of things I haven't worked out. I've literally from yesterday got the go ahead from the collective corporation. People like this. So right now I'm working on a model of, well, what could we charge for this? Because, I mean, in normal therapy sessions, therapists can be charging up to 1,500 Rand for an hour session, depending obviously on their qualification. So, you know, it's about money at the end of the day, in terms of we're in business and how can we offer value to our clients. And if our therapists are trained in clean communication and know how to basically listen to a client in a therapeutic way, and that the client not only walks out feeling empowered and a hero, but they have an inner beauty, their soul is uplifted, then there'll be a value to that. And Marissa posed a question, you know, and this is why I'm answering to it very quickly from the Spark consultant. She asked this, is like, how do we do business after that first 2 months or month of super busy, super booked out, and then it goes to totally quiet because people don't have any more money, because that's the trend that's happening in Europe. And so what I'm proposing is, in those 2 months, let's say if we're looking to what's happening in Europe, we use those 2 months to bring across in a non-affronting way this new style of working that our therapists have, of value adding and of providing counseling essentially, or coaching in a very gentle manner, because we can't force it, and we can't just suddenly say, oh yeah, we're qualified therapists. This has to be handled very, very carefully. But if the clients perceive the value, and it's like, okay, I don't have the money to go and have my hair done or have my facial, but you know what, that last session I had, my therapist really touched me, you know, on the inside. And if we can achieve something like that, and you know what, I actually want to go back for that. They might not even have this consciously in their mind, but the pull is there. If we can achieve that, then that's a blue ocean strategy. We are offering something different to the rest of the therapists out there, and we're not in shark infested water of trying to sell sessions and cannibalizing the industry, which is the worst possible thing. So that, in a nutshell, is very much how I'm approaching this from the collective corporation point of view. And I'd be very much interested to get input and questions on that, and I can take us in different directions based on questions in this session, you know, looking at what's happening in the various parts of the world, you know. And so over to you for a little bit. So I've given kind of a presentation that I would have liked to, and just opening it up.
Okay. Because if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom. I'm obviously curious as to exactly how Karl's idea would manifest itself in, you know, if people can't afford to go for a treatment, why would they then go to see their therapist, you know, just to have a cup of coffee or and a chat, and you charge for the coffee? I don't know. But that's certainly got me thinking. And I suppose the big thing is that it is a serious thing. You know, clearly from all we've seen on social media, everybody is saying, I need my hair cut, I need my nails done, etc. You know, I would kill for a massage or a facial. And as you say, Karl, I think that there is going to be a big rush initially once salons are able to open. Yeah, people are then going to think, oh, I can't afford another visit. What do I do, you know, as a salon owner? So certainly, yeah, you know, they say that people say more to their therapist or their hairstylist about their life than they do to their husband, partner, or whatever else. So I can see that there's a need for that sort of thing. It's just how somebody would then take it further and perhaps be able to maximize some income. You know?
Yeah, so what you're proposing is, how do I propose taking this magic rabbit out the hat? And so let me take you through that. So this was the graph I was actually looking for. So if you see here, looking at Spain, France, Belgium, Germany, you'll see that their graphs are all essentially tailing down. Okay, you can see Germany very much, Belgium, Spain, Italy, you know, they've got this under control. But if we move up, and we see this is now the top, and it was the other way around actually 2 weeks ago. They had Europe at the top, and they had us, and when I say us, because we're in the developing world, they had us at the bottom. But just look at what's happening in Brazil, Russia, Mexico, and Peru. It's quite frightening, guys. So this is what you know, when we've had this lockdown in South Africa, they're not really worried about people in suburbia. You know, people in suburbia are educated. They form part of essentially this curve here, this developed world curve. And what they are worrying about is in our informal settlements. Because what's going to happen in Brazil, Russia, and Mexico and Peru is going to happen here in South Africa. They've just been saying it all the time. It's just a matter of time. So if we look here in South Africa, that's where they bought the time with its lockdown, and it's rising. But I mean, if we look slightly here, we can see, sorry, this other little thing is showing up, but it is going down over the last 3 days. Well, this is maybe a little bit out of date here. It's showing, well, it's 21st of May, so we're there. It's looking accurate. So it is going down. So maybe we can not get into, and sorry, let me bring back this other graph. Maybe we can avoid the situation. So this is really the bigger context in which we're working. And this is why it's very imperative that you do have protocols in your businesses with regard to ensuring that there is no contamination from workers who are living in the informal settlements, who are coming into your business, because if you have a COVID positive case, your business gets shut down immediately. We had somebody in the collective corporation who's in the medical aesthetics business. They've been open from level 4 and offering practices because it's doctors, and they're operating out of a hospital, and they're following that level of protocol, hospital protocol. And they almost got shut down. They didn't get shut down, but they had a scare case. And the lady talked about COVID fatigue, because, you know, they just thought they'd got out and then they had the scare. So let's get back to then the point of how to pull this genie out the bottle, you know, how to rub the situation and get it. So what I'm proposing, and as Phil has said, is if we, you know, yeah, your therapists often get to hear more than the husbands know about what's going in the lives of your clients. And so if we can garner that trust, if we can harness that and offer something very politically correctly, and what I mean by that is you can't just suddenly have one of your therapists saying, oh, I'm an accredited therapist, and pretending to be a psychologist. So the particular form that we're taking in this is to use storytelling. So the particular therapy that we'll be using, and let me just change back to this other screen here. It's about a narrative. I'm trying to find the right part here. Or anyway, it'll come back to you. But basically what it is, and how it works is, basically it's about getting your clients to tell their stories, and as they tell their stories, to separate it out from actually from themselves. And as soon as you can do that, then it becomes manageable. And I feel that anybody can do this who is able to listen. And that is probably the key requirement that we're going to have to train our staff to do, is how to actually listen carefully. If they can do that, then all they need to do, and that's why I'm calling it an objective philosophy framework, is to be objective and to separate what is the issue from the person. Because you aren't necessarily, and the doctor that we had speaking about this presented it far better than I can, and that's why the doctor will handle the training. But essentially what she was saying is, you aren't the problem, and she had very good examples of that, which escaped my mind right now. But I feel that in listening to the story, and this is why, let me bring it back to Africa. We have a tradition in Africa of storytelling, which is very unique. Old knowledge was passed down. They didn't have writing. They did it with storytelling. So essentially, we want to take that way that is African, that Ubuntu, heartfelt way of sharing, and encourage it. And then through listening, separate out the issue, the object of the issue, out from the person. And you don't really have to do anything about it. It's not much more complicated than that. And as soon as you do that, something arises in the person. First of all, they're feeling heard in a way that they aren't usually heard. And that then brings a sense of love and connection. And And then the second thing is it starts to offer value because they can get perspective on their life, which is why they're speaking about things to their therapist, as in the stylist or during the manicure even, that they don't even speak to their husband about, because they feel the permission. And so what I'm wanting to do is to leverage that we have as a gift in our industry, and then to meld it into a philosophy or a framework that offers value. How we charge for that and how we value add for that remains to be seen. This is what I'm working on right now. But for example, let's say we have the rush of clients coming in for their actual makeovers, but then they go home and they're saying, oh, I don't really have so much money, but I would love to be actually talking to, my therapist. We had a great chat. Then it becomes possible to do online consulting and to do a Zoom meeting with your client and to say, oh, let me just have a look at how you're doing. And at the same time, then to re-engage in that manner. And perhaps that would be something at the fraction of the cost. I don't know. This is all unknown at this point. I'm speculating. I'm playing in blue ocean. I don't know the answer to these things, but why I'm presenting to you is, for those of you that are interested, come join us in the Collective Corporation and let's talk about it, and let's see let the best ideas float to the top. So this is kind of a rough overview. And Phil, I'm also just aware of time. We're about half an hour. So I just want to open it up a little bit, come back to you. And if you can play devil's advocate of what's not necessarily clear for you there.
Yeah, I suppose for me, it's whatever it is, obviously the therapist earns an income through her time, whether it be doing a treatment or whether it would be talking to a client on a Zoom or whatever it might be. So the time factor is always going to be there. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how somebody can create more or the same income. As you say, it might have to be at a lower cost to do something like that. But then again, if you're not working doing treatments, then you're not earning any money. So better to earn something than nothing. A bit like the whole thing where we are now with retailing product. Nobody's making a fortune from that at this stage, but it could be, it's an extra little something that people would not necessarily have had. The thing for me, I think, is that the connection is a great thing. Obviously, I think that there's going to be, as you've hinted at, a new way of thinking, perhaps with everybody involved in what is their priorities going forward nowadays. And it might be that having a facial or massage is no longer as important, but there's still that connection. So I'm also, floating around with the ideas as you are yourself at the moment, just mulling it over. But there's certainly going to be a need for the treatments. There's certainly going to be a need for that connection, and it's. I'm not perhaps clever enough to think of where exactly it's going to go, but I do appreciate where you're coming from very much. I'd be very interested to know what other people are thinking. There are a good number of people watching. Lizelle here is saying that her philosophy, I can't even say it now, philosophy. There we go. Yes, it was to empower clients, which it is part of the gig, and I think people need to be reminded of that, because it has been at least 8 weeks now since somebody's been to a salon. So it's part of it. Sandy is Sandy Fur. She's saying, Karl, I like the thinking and the concept to upskilling our therapists with a more thorough psychological connect with our clients. My question is, how do we get our therapists trained up to offer this connection?
Now that's a great question. So
Thank you, Sandy.
essentially, yes. What we're doing is we're very quickly putting together a framework where essentially what we'll want to do, and look, it's going to rely on technology at this point, but essentially is if we can get our therapists onto Zoom, for example, on their phones, and in fact, you can even use WhatsApp and do a video call on a phone. But what we want to do is create some virtual workshops, because that's the only way you can reach numbers quickly. So if we were to do something like we're doing a Zoom webinar today, and we have 40 or 50 therapists, very much the doctor would be able to take them through the process. And by the end of that, they'd have the rudimentaries. And so pretty much between now and next week, I'll have put together a program, a framework of how we'll be doing this, and essentially presenting it in the collective corporation and looking for people who want to take up on it. We're not charging anything for this. We're going to take a long-term view on this. We just want to get the staff accredited and put it out there and start testing the technology of what we're proposing. And so we're in this together. So for those of you that feel to come take part in an experiment, and probably that's the best way to say it, it's an experiment. But if I bring it back to where you are, Phil, let's just say I was your massage therapist and I was giving you a great massage, man to man, all good at that level.
Thank you.
And, you know, I've been listening to you for a while and you've been chatting. And what I start to discern is that, Phil, what I'm hearing is that you have some concerns about the future, and it's bothering you. So yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I'm going to play it out with you a little bit. I'm not too skilled in this particularly, but let's just play it out. And, you know, okay, just give me a moment, because I've tuned into presenting, but I'm going to tune into a different brainwave right now. So give me a moment. Tuning out of presenting mode and tuning into therapy mode as I've been learning from the doctor. Okay. Yeah. So what I'd ask you, Phil, is how are you feeling about income at this point? You know, yeah, is it worrying you?
Well, obviously, I think it's a worry for everybody in the world, not only just South Africa, but certainly in South Africa, we are concerned where the economy is going to go. And I think for us, particularly in our industry, there's no clue as to when people will start be able to make some money. And you know, you hear about businesses, salons that are going bust already. People cannot continue. And I think that is a big concern, and probably more than the fact that we're not earning at the moment, it's the uncertainty of when people might start earning money.
Great. So thank you for sharing that. And so basically what I've done at this point is I've just highlighted the pain, and everybody's got pain. You know, we're going to have that our clients come in, and some of them might not have knowledge of whether they're going to have jobs. Their bank accounts might be decreasing, all sorts of things like this. So what I want to do is then, I'm obviously doing a speeded up version here. I want to take you to Hero. So, and that's where the lady, I didn't see the name, was talking about empowering. So
Yeah.
what I want to seize upon is something that you said to me earlier on before this session started, is you talked about how yesterday you did a webinar internationally. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, so this was very much aimed at the spa industry worldwide, and we had speakers from countries such as Australia, America, South Africa, the UK, France, Belgium, India, all over. 3 days, and they were sharing their ideas on where the industry might go after lockdown in those various countries, and just giving some thoughts and ideas, and hopefully starting up some conversations here and there as well.
Great. And Phil, I mean, you were very pivotal in all of that. And how do you feel about being part of that?
it's good. You know, that I think one of the things that we offer as a business is a communication channel for people to exchange ideas and to hear what's going on and keep informed, and to
But
be able to offer that service is great.
Phil, I'm going to interrupt you there.
Go on.
Sorry, I'm playing the game. But when I heard you saying that, I was very impressed, more impressed, and really the enormity of what you were doing there for me was, it took my breath away for a fraction. It's like, wow, yeah, out of South Africa, and that was happening. That's amazing, and that impressed me. And so I want to try and bring across to you in this moment, and perhaps I'm not doing it effectively, but I would like you to feel how impressed I was, and I'm not, putting hot air up your ass. I'm basically saying I was impressed that this is something that you're working on, and I'd like you to take that home and to feel that really that. Because I'm thinking now, okay, well, if you're doing that around the world, then maybe I can present the collective corporation to the channels that you're opening up. And suddenly we're starting to connect and things are happening. And maybe this collective corporation thing, if we can get people who are listening today to get their staff involved, and they start, maybe we're inventing something new. And maybe, I don't know, a year from now, we're all looking back on this conversation and saying, wow, do you remember when we had this chat? So how are you feeling after what I've just said there?
I think, for me, Karl, that's great. The more we can do for this industry, for the individuals involved in it, the better, you know. And yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Is there any
excitement? Is there any excitement?
Yeah. No. It is good. Sorry, I'm English. You know, we don't express our excitement that much.
I know. So that's why I'm jumping in there a little bit. So basically, what I'd want to do is to start bringing up that sense of excitement, which is in there. And if we're doing that, we're raising the energy of the individual, and basically we're empowering them. And they walk out of the session, or whether it's a remote consulting session, they feel empowered. And if they experiencing that every time from their therapist, we all want that. And so this is the value that I'm proposing is in this example. Hopefully, if it's come across, I don't know if it has, but that's essentially what we want our therapists to do. And I feel that they're already doing that from the outside. They're already making people over and transforming them, that they walk in, they're a bit disheveled, and they walk out shining. But what I'm proposing is with this internal therapy process, that they're not only shining from the outside, but they're shining from the inside. And where better than an initiative like this to come from Africa, because we know Africa is about heart. I mean, the people in Africa and the hardships that they put up with, and how we see it every day, and how they go back and have a smile on their faces. This is an African gift. And I'm essentially wanting to take this energy and bring it through our staff to our clients, and who knows from there. That's the proposal.
Yeah. No, I do see where you're coming from, and I think it is a great initiative, and obviously we'll do anything we can to help. I mean, Lizelle, who was the lady who asked the previous question, she's saying that we need to bear in mind that not all therapists are necessarily nurturing. Which is true, but this I would assume would be part of the training initiative to bring out that little bit extra nurturing that people might have hidden inside them.
Absolutely. And what I would like to ask everybody who's watching this is Phil smiling a little bit more than he was earlier on?
Oh, because probably.
I'd like to propose that you are. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to create feel good, and that's the wellness industry. And to that question, you know, if a therapist isn't nurturing, then I think they're in the wrong industry, because I wouldn't want somebody to give me a facial who isn't nurturing. I want a nurturing touch. So I think this will certainly, and that's why we're going to have an accreditation process in this. And certainly, I wouldn't want somebody who's not accredited to start doing this, because then they're going into areas that they shouldn't go into. So yeah, we're looking for the best of the staff to start with this, to create a culture around this, and then at the same time to build this culture within the salon, within the team, and it'll change the nature of how we work together. This is a black swan event. We are not going to work the same going forward. So here's a new element that can come in. It's kind of like an Uber kind of moment, and if we pull it off, who knows? So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, I think so. And Renz is saying sometimes just listening is nurturing for some people. I'm not sure nurturing is quite the word. I don't know.
No, it's nurturing, definitely.
Nurturing, I think.
I actually had some notes from yesterday from the doctor, and on that point, what the doctor was saying, let me just pull out my notes, is the doctor basically gave an overview of how it works. And basically the doctor says is that you need an insertion point, which is the client sitting down in front of you or having a session in the first place. That's your insertion point. And the second thing is opening up listening. And what she said is, it's not about giving plans, it's about listening with your heart. That's the point that she made very clearly yesterday. And now that what I'm going to go into next is going to really ring some bells for you guys. And by the way, this webinar you can listen to. So whatever I'm talking about now, you can access it. And Shivani can give the link for that later. But what she said is after listening, so listening is not about giving plans, it's about listening with your heart. And then she said, now listen to this, it creates loyalty. Now, isn't that what we all want? Absolutely. So if this program generates loyalty, wow. And then she went on to say, what we want to do is manage the emotions. And she had a particular way of talking about, because the emotions at first will come up will be the sort of the poisoned emotions, and then how to manage those in the session, in the talking that you're doing. And it's about mastering boundaries, between professional and personal. There's a whole thing, when to be assertive, when not. And then she went on to the last stage, is tolerance for vulnerability. And she says, I'm just reading from my notes that I took quickly. You see it in the body language, you see it in the eyes, and very vulnerable people. And she was talking about tolerance levels around vulnerability. People have different levels. So Phil, being English, has a different scale on the vulnerability level scale. But I think that's just a kind of a little overview that there's a definite program here, and it's very logical, it's very sequential. And I think the key word that stood out for me is loyalty. If we can build loyalty, we have a business.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I think we need to obviously ensure is that therapists don't suddenly think, as you mentioned, that they're psychologists, that it's at a level below that it is more a listening thing rather than a diagnosis or a suggested treatment route. Even is that empathy that people are going to be offering, I'm assuming is the way it will be. And you mentioned that the certificate or whatever it might be, what do you think? Have you got any thoughts on the wording of how that would be worded to if you like, constrain expectations from people, or?
Yes, that's a really good question. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for the doctor to take the lead in that. Basically, the doctor will do the accreditation. And what will also happen is, the way it works is the doctor will create teams that support other teams. And that's why it fits very well with a collective corporation, because essentially what you'll do is you'll get people who are more skilled at this, and they'll float up in the industry, and they will support other people who are less skilled, because obviously the doctor can't be available to everybody. So essentially what we would love to do is to achieve owners getting a level of accreditation, and then being holders of this, if we want to call it technology, this human technology, into their own businesses. This particular way of working has been developed over the last 40 years. It comes from, not from the Freudian psychology basis, but from the Jungian psychotherapy basis. And so it's a methodology that's been refined. And what we've done is we've added elements into it now in a South African way. Like I was saying earlier on, NVC, nonviolent communication, which is a very necessary ingredient because obviously we know in South Africa there is a lot of violence. And the other elements that we're also bringing into it. So we're actually creating our own synthesis of this. And the doctor did a PhD. The doctor's primarily worked in education, in schools, and basically bringing this across, and it's a perfect fit for our industry. And so this is not some Mickey Mouse thing that we're doing. This is really backed up with and in fact the doctor got for her PhD got world acclaim for it, because bringing in the element of African storytelling as a slightly different element that had been missed before in the people who developed it, the original technique. So if we look at, South Africa having a braai or sitting around a fire, this is something in Africa that we've been doing and we're very comfortable with. And so storytelling is something that's very close to our hearts. And so that's drawing on that tradition. And that's why I think it's the perfect place for it to happen here in South Africa.
Yeah, cool. We have a question from Nita, which I think we've answered here or there. She's asking, she was in the beauty industry for 10 years. Have we thought about teaching skills online for a minimal cost to generate income for your therapists and owners? So I'm assuming, Nita, that you mean the skills that we're talking about today, which I think, Karl, you were saying you'd be offering for free at this stage.
Yes, agreed. I mean, the whole point is that we can't be expecting the therapist to be coming up with funds to pay for training and things like this. So how the details will work about this in the long run, I'm not concerned about that. My concern is how to get your therapist upskilled to value add and to derive additional income. If we get that right, we'll get the rewards later.
Yeah. So I hope that's answered your question, Nita.
And I think if I can just come in, I think Nita, if she's talking about online training, there's so much online training that's available right now. For example, ESP, we're offering free online training every day. We have a 10 o'clock webinar on how to run the salons, how to do stock take, all those sorts of things. So there's so much of this that is available right now. And then at the same time, the therapists themselves can be doing training to clients on how to do facials. There's everybody's coming up with different strategies at this point. A lot of blue ocean thinking. Over to you, Phil.
Yeah. Certainly with training, there aren't, as you said, there's a lot of stuff. We have had people asking, is there any way we can do some more online training on things like nails or eyelashes? The problem is with that you need the practical training, and that needs a model or something to work on. And of course, we can't do that at the moment unless you have a sister or somebody that lives with you, perhaps. But unfortunately, all the training that is available is very much the theoretical at the moment. It'll be great if at some point we can in some way open up some more practical experience. I know the colleges are obviously struggling. They can't do any training because we're all in the same boat here with that. But yes, certainly it is a great opportunity at the moment to learn additional skills and to hone skills that somebody might already have. Is there anything further you'd like to add, Karl, to where we are?
I think we've covered, unless there are any specific questions. I think somebody asked just for the details of how to get connected to the collective corporation. So Shivani, who's listening in, if you could maybe just post some sort of link that you've been using to the WhatsApp group or whatever. Shivani's showing as another one of me in the panelists here, so it might come up as me actually putting that. So if you can do that, Shivani.
Just like that.
Yeah,
she's done it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Great. And so just, opening it up, if there are any other questions, what I'd love to hear is if people like the ideas, the initiatives,
Yeah, if maybe people could perhaps just give us a quick thumbs up of some sort in the chat side, just to say, yeah, great idea, or not, that would be, well, encouraging, if nothing else. There we go. We've got a thumbs up or two. Yeah, so that's good. They're coming to the, yeah, there we go. People, yeah. It does seem to be that people are liking the idea. We don't seem to have any further questions, Karl. So what I would say is you've obviously got the link to the collective yeah, and we will also share that ourselves on our webpage. Yeah, it's all very positive what's coming in. So well done on that, Karl. Depending on how long the lockdown carries on for, we might have Karl back to update us, but that would be good actually, I think, Karl, if we can, when you have ironed out a few more of the actual practicalities of it, that could be good. So
great, I'd love to.
I'd like to thank you for talking to us about your ideas, and to remind people that we have another webinar coming up at midday, which will be a chat with a lady, Tracy from Holland. They have opened up their nail salons, and she's in the last 10 days already gained some experience of the practical side of what's happened since opening them up, but also how they got the government to agree. Obviously, they're in a different area of the curve, etc., to ourselves. But I think that'll be a very interesting chat. She'll be on with Sinette van Rensburg. And then we've got Marisa Dimitriadis at 2 o'clock talking about retailing to a cash-strapped client, which is something people need to think about, how they're going to approach that. So lots going on today. Thank you again, Karl, and we'll hopefully see everybody shortly. Take care and enjoy the Peru.
Thanks very much, Phil. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.